Hello, students. Today we're going to go over how to write your introduction for your lit review. So this is assuming that you've read all of the articles at this point, that you've written your outline, and now you're going to start writing your introduction. So before I show you how to do that, I do want to show you a good example of a student who just turned in their outline. I have it right here. So here is the student's outline. They did their introduction. Subtopic 1, they're going to answer the question, how has technology affected us physically, intelligence, and they've got car, tweens. Next one, how has technology affected us mentally, mental health, Dennis Twerry, teens, another one. This is good. I would recommend adding a few more scholars into this one. I think the student will run out of things to say if they only have 2 with this. The one about intelligence, 2 works because only 2 really talked about that. But mental health, several scholars wrote about that one. So you'll have much more material to work with if you go through and find more things in there. And then finally, how has technology affected us socially or relationships? And we've got lots here. Kelly, Turkle, Twenge. You've also got the Pew Research. You've also got the last 2 I gave you. I can't remember. I'm looking at my board over here. The last one after the Pew Research one, there were 2 published in Vox magazine that you could use for this. So we've got tons of things that we can write about right here. So you've got your introduction. So you've got your well, my brain's not working. Your outline, and now you're going to work on your introduction. Okay, so what we're going to do here is I've got 3 students, Elijah, Sophia, and Lydia. They're all my students from last year. All of them got 100 out of 100 points on their literature review. So we're going to read a little bit of those today. We're going to see what they did well, see where they can make it a little bit better, and learn from them. The research shows over and over and over again, look, I'm doing an informal literature review right now, that if students analyze good writing, their own writing improves. So here's Elijah's. Okay, so we've got this right here. Here's Elijah's. Now, I'm going to give you a brief overview of this. So he wrote his literature review on teenage anxiety, and here's his introduction. So you'll know, like, a brief overview of this. His literature review goes to 8 pages. The overall literature review, it's going to be due in a few weeks. Don't worry about it now. This week, you're just writing your introduction. It's 6 to 8 pages of typed writing. So that does not include the title page, nor does it include the reference page. So he's got 6 pages of type, so it's perfect right there. His interview is right here, and he breaks it up into 2 questions. Why are teens more anxious and depressed today? Can society do anything to get rid of the anxiety? And you'll notice right here, he answers the first question, takes a few pages to answer the first question, and then the second question, what can be done? Now, however this question appears in the introduction, it should be right here. So that question should be exactly how it was stated up there. And then he spends a few pages answering that question. So this today is simply about introductions. So take a moment right now, pause my video, read his introduction, and answer the question, what do you notice? So go ahead, press pause, and I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so you should have noticed a few things. I'll come back here into Canvas. You'll notice that in your introduction, you need to hook the reader, give background information, answer the question, why is this important, and then leave on to your thesis. So if you look at Elijah's essay, he doesn't have a hook. You don't necessarily need a hook with this type of writing because literature reviews are kind of frankly boring. You don't really need a hook, but we're going to push you to have a hook here. So it's just very informative. So he hops right in there, and the first paragraph, he answers the question, like the background information. He fills us in on the most important background information. So right here, check that off. Set up background information for the reader. Second paragraph, he has told us why this topic is important and why we should know about it. That was fairly simple. And then his thesis. Now, remember from those informative videos from last time, the guy from Maryland University of Maryland Community College, Greendale, he told us that these are not argumentative. This is not where you argue. So thesis, what is that? Like your thesis here is a little bit different than an argumentative thesis. Your thesis is simply the purpose of your literature review. So right here is the thesis. So simple. This literature review will answer the following questions. 1, why are teens more anxious and depressed today? 2, how can society do anything to get rid of it? That's the thesis. That's the thesis. And the rest of this essay, this literature review, Elijah is going to directly answer those questions. Okay, so it's a very simple, effective introduction. Now let's look at someone who did a more interesting hook. This one is incredible. Click on, actually, before we do that, let's do Lydia's first. I want you to notice what Lydia does. Lydia is very similar to what Elijah did. And so once again, let's do a brief overview. First page, overall, it's 9 pages, but remember the title page and the reference page do not count, but they're perfect. So she has, it looks like 6.5 pages of typed material. Remember, your overall literature review, when you're done in a few weeks, needs to be 6 to 8 pages. Okay. So her introduction is 1 full page. She's got 2 paragraphs. First one here, second one here, and it looks like her thesis is going to be right here. And then after that thesis, she transitions a little bit into the question, so it's not so abrupt. But then you'll see, first question, what are the effects of sleep deprivation? She takes a few pages to answer that, according to the research. Would changing school start times help remedy sleep deprivation? She takes a few pages to answer that and what the literature has to say about that. And then finally, would changing school start times affect other aspects of life? Now, this one she could have done a little bit more on. If you only have a paragraph of material, it probably shouldn't be a section, and she should have probably merged that in with something, another thing, and maybe just answer 2 questions. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, pause the video now. So pause the video, read Lydia's introduction with the question in mind. What do you notice, and what does she do in an introduction? So press pause. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, we're back. You'll notice Lydia does the same thing that Elijah does. Go back here. Background information for our reader, answers why is this important, and then moves on to her thesis. She doesn't really have a hook, nothing super engaging, but she does try to start it a little bit more interesting. So let's look at her. Sleep is undoubtedly crucial for surviving. It's okay as far as the first sentence goes. Not really what I would call a hook, but this whole introduction is effective. First part, she is going to address background information. Second and then she background information. She talks about why it's important. She transitions on to the thesis, and the thesis is right here, folks. This is easy writing, and especially if you've already done your summaries, you've already done your connections, and you've already done your outline. The rest of this essay shouldn't be too much effort. Yeah, you're going to have to budget some time and take some time to do it, but it's really not that difficult. Okay, so now let's go to Sophia's. Sophia's is, she does a really good job. She's going to do a much better job at her hook. So take a few moments now, pause the video, read Sophia's introduction. It's a page and a half. It's a little bit longer. And then we'll discuss it in a moment. So go ahead, press pause. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, you're back. All right. Her hook is incredible. She does a phenomenal strategy, right? Like, so this is really, 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 really good. But what she did to get her readers' attention is she told 2 anecdotes. These weren't personal anecdotes. They were some that she found while doing the research for mass incarceration. So the first paragraph, she told the story of Jason Hernandez. And the second paragraph, she told the story of Johnny Perez. So 2 anecdotes, and that gives us background information, and it also implicitly tells us why this is important. So she did a good job here. A few things in here. Not a huge fan of the very first sentence. I like that it's short, but I actually think this is a better first sentence right here. So I would encourage her to delete this one, but this right here, he stood before the judge. Maybe Jason Hernandez stood before the judge, partially listening to his sentence as it was read off to him at 21 years old. I love this sentence. Oh man, this is good. This is the sentence I want to call attention to. Whew. His charges were related to low-level drug crime, distributing crack cocaine. Very good sentence right here. Really interesting, personal. It tells us why it's important. And then we have another one. Now, personally, I would have only picked one story. You don't necessarily need two. I still would have used both stories in my essay, but I would have just used one in the introduction. Throwing two in the introduction is just a little bit too much, and it could cause a little bit of confusion for your readers. So her hook, she uses an anecdote she found while doing her research. Then she talks about background information, the necessary things, and why it's important. U.S. state prisons has more people than any other nation, so we need to fix this. She gives us some necessary terms, and then she moves on to her thesis. Boom, right here. Okay, the literature review will address the following three major factors that contribute to the issue of mass incarceration. 1, harsh sentences and excessive punishment for nonviolent crimes. 2, President Richard Nixon's war on drugs. And 3, private prisons. Then she takes another sentence to transition from her introduction to the questions. And notice how this question right here, it appears exactly how it is throughout here. So she asks that question. She uses the next few pages to answer it. Her next subtopic, Richard Nixon's war on drugs, it appears exactly here the way it does in her introduction. And here's what the literature says about that. And then right here, private prisons, exactly there. Like beautifully written. So if you know Sophia, tell her that we're using her writing as a solid example in this class, and congratulate her for that. Okay. So what you're going to do this week is you're going to write your introduction for your literature review on technology. So you need to do those 4 things. It needs to be about a page and a half, use APA format, and I have made a template specifically for literature reviews. So here's your title. Now, typically for titles, I save it until the very end. I'm not going to worry about my title right now because it's more creative, and that sometimes I can get bogged down on that detail, so I save it for the end. However, if you can't move past it right now and you want a title, I always love this colon template. On the left-hand side, this is where I do something creative, something maybe with alliteration. Maybe you start all the same letter, 3 or 4 words. And then the second part, a literature review of technology. It'd be pretty simple. So maybe the first part is where you're creative. The second part, a literature review of technology. Keep in mind that you need all caps, 50 characters or less, and then you have it here, and then you have it here. Thanks, APA, for being freaking redundant. So all you're doing right now is your introduction. Your introduction should be 2 solid paragraphs, and it should be about a page to a page and a half, and it should accomplish all of those things that I've told you on Canvas. Hook, necessary background information, explain why your topic is important, and then your thesis. Okay, so let's go ahead now and don't forget, use Grammarly, and don't forget to I don't remember. So 5 strategies for your hook. So your hook is going to be about 1 paragraph. Okay, so I've got 5 different strategies, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You can paint a picture. This could be a hypothetical one. You can go, this one comes from an article about phones carrying. So read that one. So you can try to paint a picture. Read that example there. Another one you can use is a metaphor. Make a comparison to help explain a complicated topic to a general reader. I swear, if you compare phones to drugs like everyone else, don't do it. It's a cliche metaphor. Also, it's not a very appropriate metaphor. Like, this and crack cocaine are not the same. You don't go into rehab because you've been on your phone, right? Like, you don't need to detox. Like, don't use that metaphor. Use something else. This is a cool metaphor. A lichen is what happens when a fungus hugs an algae and doesn't let go. It's a sweet arrangement. Woo-hoo! If you're going to do a metaphor, come up with something good. And then take that paragraph and explain how technology and the metaphor you have chosen are similar. Another one, you can start with a question. Now, if you're organizing your literature review through questions, maybe don't do that. I think your first sentence as a question it's a strategy that's it's overused, and I'm not a fan of it. So maybe consider something else. But you can do it, but just make sure it's a good question. Tell a story. This is what Sophia did. You can make a personal connection. You can tell a personal anecdote. You can tell someone else's story. This is the story. This is the strategy that Jean Twenge used when she got up to the TED Talk stage. She talked about the text message her daughter sent her that very day, and she talked about how that was a meaningful experience. This is a really good rhetorical strategy for starting an essay. Oh, I just got a text message, probably from my wife. I've got a soccer game. I got to get out of here. So I got to start wrapping this up. Start with a story. Maybe it's something that you witnessed. I remember a while back, my wife and I, we went to Texas Roadhouse. It was just she and I, and evidently it was prom or winter. I don't know. It was a high school dance was going on several years back. And you know how you're waiting for your table at Texas Roadhouse in the peanut room, and we saw several students there, tuxedos and dresses, 3 couples, tuxedo dress, and they were none of them were talking to each other. Every single one was in their own phone, just doing their own thing, clearly avoiding the awkwardness that was the high school prom. Maybe you can start with a story like that. So you can start with a story. I like this one. Make a pop culture reference. Start with the popular movie, TV show, meme, TikTok, something that most people would recognize, and you can do it here. This one comes from a New York Times article. Do viral videos really tell you anything about today's teens? And this person summarizes that one TikTok video of that teenage girl, Gracie Cunningham, where she's talking about math, and she says that she doesn't think math is real. It's quite a funny TikTok, and it's very, very interesting, actually. So there's that strategy. This is also the same strategy that Nicholas Carr used when he wrote Is Google Making Us Stupid? He started off with the allusion to Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. In the past, my students have taken the first paragraph and summarized WALL-E, not the entire film, but just the parts of the film that are pertinent to the discussion. So very little about WALL-E, actually, and the robot and Eve and their character development. It was more about the people on the ship and how technology became a driving wedge between relationships, and how at the end they didn't get rid of technology, but they analyzed it closely in their relationship with it and were able to embrace people more. So maybe you can start with WALL-E. Another student in the last period that I was teaching is using the song lyrics of Simon and Garfunkel, Sound of Silence. Other students have done other movies. Think about that Netflix anthology. What is that? Black Mirror. Maybe you summarize an episode of Black Mirror that's particularly relevant to our topic. So you spend a few sentences summarizing that episode or that movie or those song lyrics, and then the rest of that paragraph you're going to explain. Like with the song lyrics, Simon and Garfunkel's song is just as relevant today in 2020 as it was 70 or 50 years ago in the 1970s. And you can just make the connections. So your homework over the week is to write your introduction, page to page and a half, APA format, run it through Grammarly, make sure you have a hook, background information, answer why it's important, and then most importantly, your thesis. Folks, if you have any questions or comments, let me know. Email me. I'm happy to help you out. Happy writing, folks. I'll see you next time.